Welcome to the presentation of the City of Vancouver's 2012 to 2014 Draft Capital Plan. In this presentation, we will overview the capital planning process of the City, outline the financial context that this plan was developed, detail the items in the Draft Capital Plan, and then tell you about the next steps that we will follow in this process. In the City, we have two main types of budgets. The capital budget details the investments we make in the assets and the infrastructure that support the city and that are funded over the long term. This budget is approximately $200 million per year. The operating budget details the day-to-day activities of the city, and it's mostly labor costs and focuses on the short-term operations of the city. This budget is approximately $1 billion per year. In developing this capital plan, we've strived to balance the needs for maintaining our existing assets in good condition, meeting the needs of new residents, and responding to new priorities within the city. The city has many partners that work with us to help fund the infrastructure and services that we provide within the city, including regional, provincial, federal governments, Board of Education, and other private and non-profit partners. This year we've structured the capital plan around the categories of services that we provide to the community. We have 7 main categories, including the community facilities, housing, parks and open spaces, public safety, transportation, utilities and public works, and civic infrastructure. The city has an extensive array of assets that we own. We own over 400 buildings that total over 6.3 million square feet of floor space. We have over 14 square kilometers of parks and open spaces within the city. There are approximately 4,700 kilometers of sidewalks, bikeways, and roads. We have 3,600 kilometers of pipes within the city underneath our streets and boulevards. If we had to rebuild all the city's assets today, the cost to replace these assets would total approximately $19 billion. We use the following guiding principles to develop this draft capital plan: support the council, board, and community priorities, align with the city's strategic plan, respond to emerging priorities, demonstrate fiscal prudence, and embed sustainability in the work that we do. Partner strategically across all sectors, phase large-scale projects over time, prioritize multi-use facilities that serve more than one purpose, and build flexible, adaptable, and expandable assets that can be used for different purposes in the future. The capital program is a 3-step process. We first developed a 10-year outlook, identifying the capital needs over the longer term of the city. We then take that and develop a 3-year plan outlining the near-term projects we undertake for capital assets. This ultimately will lead into a 1-year capital budget as the plan is developed. Currently, we are detailing the 3-year plan. We presented a draft capital plan to council in June. We're now undertaking public consultation with this plan, and ultimately a final plan will be presented to council in September for their approval. And from that plan, any necessary borrowing that needs to be approved by the public will go to a public site during the municipal election on November 19th, 2011. There are a few new things in this capital plan. First, we're guided by a 10-year strategic outlook identifying the needed capital investments within the city. We've taken a more integrated organizational-wide strategy, and we've accounted for all funding mechanisms except for the Property Endowment Fund. This includes funding from reserve funds, other operating accounts, and monies we get from developers and other community contributions. Now we will overview the financial context for this capital plan. The total amount that the city spends on capital programs has increased over the last 4 capital plans. Funding has gone up by a total of 131%. Some of this funding is due to advancing projects so that we could leverage funding of the investments that were made during the Olympics. The city engaged an external consultant to review the financial health of the city's capital spending. In many respects, we're doing fairly well, but there are some key indicators that are indicating that we may be a little more careful in the future as to how much we spend. The key ratio is the amount that it costs us to pay for the debt we borrow versus how much we spend in our operating budget. That number is approaching a moderately high to high number if we continue spending at the rate that we currently have been. This chart shows two scenarios as to how much it will cost the city to pay the principal and interest payments on the debt. The blue line shows what would happen if we continue to borrow at the levels we did during 2006 to 2008. The magenta line shows what would happen if we did not borrow any further money in the future. During the development of the capital plan, we identified target amounts for the various funding sources that the city has available to us. The borrowing sources, which is debenture debt for general purposes and debenture debt for utilities, had targets of 170 and 145 million. This current draft capital plan has allocations for these two borrowing sources that are approximately $70 million higher than the target amount. We now have an approximate $70 million gap between the current draft and the target funding that we would like to achieve. Capital spending over the last 12 years has increased over 131%. Debt charges as a percent of our operating budget are now approaching a high level, and when we borrow money, it impacts the operating budget for 10 years. This current draft plan exceeds our baseline by $70 million, and if we were to fund this money, it would require an equivalent 1.7% tax increase for 10 years. For every $10 million more in capital that we spend, if we were to fund this from the operating budget, that would equal a 1.72% tax increase. And if we were to borrow that money, it would equal a 0.24% tax increase each year for 10 years. Now we're going to outline what projects and funding we have in our draft capital plan. The current draft plan includes over $770 million of funding in the categories of transportation, utilities and public works, community facilities, housing, parks and open spaces, public safety, civic infrastructure, and funds set aside for contingency and overhead associated with our capital programs. In the last 10 years, we have accomplished many improvements to the community facilities within the city that serve the needs of the citizens. The draft capital plan includes $84 million of funding to support childcare facilities, social spaces, recreation centers, libraries and archives, cultural facilities, and entertainment and exhibition assets of the city. In the last 10 years, the city has acquired many new affordable housing units, and we've also acquired sites to build new housing projects with our external partners. In this draft capital plan, we've allocated $61 million to acquire land and provide grants for additional housing units with our partners and to maintain and repair the existing units that the city owns. In the last 10 years, we've upgraded many of our parks and public open spaces, improved our fields, added new facilities, planted new street trees, and installed new public works of art. In the draft capital plan, $41 million has been allocated to improve and renew several of our parks, create new spaces and new features, achieve our greenest city goals for community gardens and urban farms, plant new trees, and improve the facilities at our cemetery. In the last 10 years, we've made major investments in our police facilities, improved fire halls and added new capacities for search and rescue, and maintained our existing animal control facility. In the draft capital plan, we've allocated $25 million for public safety projects with a primary focus on repairing and replacing our fire halls. In the last 10 years, we've invested in our transportation system to improve walking and cycling, increase road safety, and maintain and repair our road and sidewalk assets. In the draft capital plan, there's $165 million proposed to maintain our aging infrastructure, improve walking and cycling, make major investments in our bridges and overpasses, and to ensure that in the last 10 years, we've undertaken investments to maintain our utilities and public works. We've replaced water main pipes, we've separated our sewers to reduce pollution, we've done work on our landfill, and we've created a new energy utility for Southeast Falls Creek to provide heat to the buildings in that area. In the draft capital plan, $251 million has been allocated to continue replacing our water mains, separating our sewers, improving our assets, continue ongoing work at our landfill, and to expand our energy utility as new buildings are constructed in the Southeast Falls Creek area. In the last 10 years, we've invested in the infrastructure that allows the city to provide services to the public. We've improved our buildings and yards, replaced our vehicles and equipment, and improved the information technology systems that we use every day. We have allocated $103 million in the draft capital plan to continue to maintain, upgrade, repair and replace the infrastructure, buildings, and equipment and computer systems that the city uses. We have included a map of some of the locations where major projects are proposed in this capital plan. And now to review the next steps. We are continuing our public engagement on the draft capital plan. We have held 3 public information sessions, and now we are moving to our online forum discussion at our talkvancouver.com website, where we wish to hear your feedback. This website has links to our capital plan booklet, a survey where you can let us know what is important to you, a capital plan calculator tool where you can create your own capital plan, and forums where you can provide feedback on topics of discussion. After we complete our public consultation, the city will develop a final capital plan. The final plan will be presented to the public and council and boards in September. You will have an opportunity to provide comments and feedback directly to council at that time. Council and the boards will make their final decision on the capital plan in mid-September. After the plan has been approved by council, Vancouver residents will then vote on a plebiscite question to allow the city to borrow the funds necessary to deliver this plan. This vote will be undertaken during the municipal election on Saturday, November 19th. Thank you for listening to this presentation on the city's draft capital plan. Please visit our website at talkvancouver.com to provide your input. Thank you.